Greetings respected viewers, I'm George from Ireland. Here I am in Charleston of Aberlour. The village is commonly simply called Aberlour. So go back over 200 years ago and there were three brothers, Charles, Archie and George. I think their surname was Grant in each case. But anyway, they each founded a village. This is Charleston of Aberlour. Then there's Archiston, which is a village on the far side of the River Spey. You can't see the Spey from here. And there's Georgetown, which unfortunately is merely a farm, never really took off. So we are in Strathspey, as in the Spey Valley, a river which flows very fast, which is great for fishing. And it's called Aberlour, or Aberlour, as some people pronounce it, because the burn, that's a stream, the Lour, is a tributary, flows into the Spey just here. So Aber, that's what it means in Celtic languages. Anyway, so the population is about 1,000. We're in Banffshire, the ceremonial county of Banffshire. There's a Lord Lieutenant of Banffshire. He or she represents the Queen in the county, the same as throughout the United Kingdom. Is appointed for 1 year. It's not an elected position, and I think you only hold it for a year at a time. I don't believe it's renewable. So that's that, because Banffshire takes its name from the county town of Banff. But otherwise, we might be regarded as being in Grampian region, because in the 70s, all these Scots counties were reorganised and rationalised, and instead of having something like 40 counties, they decided that Scotland would have a number of regions. They take the very small counties and amalgamate a few of them into regions. That's why we've got Central, Lothian, Grampian, Highlands and Islands, and I can't remember the rest of them. That is Aberlour, or Aberlour if you prefer. It's nothing to do with an abbey. Some people thought it was an abbey, A-B-B-E-Y. You're wrong. So look here, a war memorial to the First World War. You can see the names etched on stone of all the local men who were killed in the First World War, and their various units. You can see the wreaths of poppies. Of course, they're not real poppies, paper and plastic poppies there. And then this symbol up high of a lion. It's not actually a cross. In much of Scotland, this is called a market cross, as in that Scots for market. If we go around the back, we'll see there's a door to it, which is locked, but people could climb up to it and make announcements from up there. Having said that, I've never heard of an announcement being made up from it. You see the laurel wreath there, as in victory, but also a tributary wreath, as in part of the obsequies. So there's a provost of Aberlour. In Scotland, the mayor is called a provost. And major cities like Edinburgh and Glasgow have got a Lord Provost. So just like in Oxford and Cambridge University, the head of house is sometimes called a provost. We come around here, we see the door to this market cross, but it's closed, I'm afraid. Okay, so if we look around the other side of the square, you can see the Church of Scotland. So this is the main place of worship in Aberlour, by far the biggest. I've been in there many times, but for the life of me, I can't remember what it's called, St. Who. So you see the time up there, fine looking 19th century church. So obviously, as in most of Scotland, this is the most common religious denomination. There's also, the clock is an interesting story. Now you'll see the clock on this side and you'll see the clock on two other sides. But on the far side of the River Spey, people there refused to donate money for the clock. So they didn't put a clock on the other side. So they didn't get to see the time, since they not donated to the cost of a clock. And of course, in the 19th century, a clock of that size cost quite a lot. What else was I going to point out? Yes, there's also St. Margaret's, the Episcopalian church, some way away. There was another church of another denomination, which is now used as a scout hall, has been since 1987. I first visited this place in 1983. And, quite a bit has changed. Places have changed hands. When I first came here, there was a Mrs. Grimsditch running the Aberlour Hotel, who was a very notable local figure. Mrs. Grimsditch, as a little boy, I said the woman whose voice sounds like a man, because she appeared to be a chain smoker. But anyway, she seemed to be as old as the century at that time. But of course, being a toddler, I couldn't really judge her age. So here's the door here. There would be more signs saying when worship is, but they share a minister with Craigellachie, which is not far away. Craigellachie, I heard people mispronounce it Craigellachie. What else? Then there's some sort of ruined chapel in the graveyard, which I've completely forgotten about. I'd not visited Aberlour since 1997. Having said that, I visited the school, I think not the village. So look up there, you see no clock. Okay, the drill hall, after the Second South African War ended in 1902, people were very concerned about the United Kingdom's lack of military preparedness, and there was even an organisation campaigning for compulsory military service in peacetime. Conservatives, people said, no, that's not the British way. We're a free people. We don't compel people to join the Royal Navy or the Army. If you wish to, that's fantastic, but you don't have to. But there was a movement to encourage people to volunteer to do part-time military service. I mean, for a long time, there have been fencibles, as in defensible units, and the idea is you'd only have to fight to defend the United Kingdom. You couldn't be sent overseas. Or there was militia, part-time soldiers, do your ordinary job and do military training once in a while. They founded the Territorial Force, we now call that the Territorial Army, a part-time army, but a drill hall to drill, as in practice. They would practice marching, they would learn how to strip rifles, how to reassemble them and things like that, learn all those sort of military skills, and that was the drill hall there. Okay, this building here was a station for the Speyside Railway, opened in 1852, and then there was the Beeching Axe. Dr. Beeching, he was tasked with looking into the United Kingdom's railways, and then in about 1964 he published the Reshaping Britain's Railways. And I can't remember the stats, but he recommended that a lot of things be closed, about 2/3 of the stations, about half the miles. And so the Beeching Axe fell on here. The last passengers came here 1968. The last freight 1971. It's since closed. It's the old station. Obviously they got it as a public lavatory, there's a cafe, there's a tourist information centre, and you'll see how it is. It's now called the Speyside Way. So it's a long distance highway. It's 50 miles or more. You can walk to Craigellachie very easily this way. What else? There are a few others like this. The West Highland Way and the Southern Upland Way are the other two long distance highways. Look how you can weigh things here if you've got very heavy goods, because you could charge people for freight depending on how heavy it was. And then you can see the River Spey behind me.
We'll come back.
So, over here, and this would be the platform. You can look here, and obviously it would go there. They've obviously planted trees and bushes there, all since 1971, by the way. And then the other way, look along the platform, this park, there's the River Spey. And don't worry, I'm not going to fall off. So there's a pedestrian bridge, the Shaking Bridge, shakes just a little as you walk across. So across the water is an area known as Wester Elkies. Further that way is Easter Elkies. So there was some grand house, Wester Elkies, and Dr. Kurt Hahn, the German educationalist, purchased it in 1936 to set up a preparatory school. The idea being the pupils from there would then go to Gordonston School about 15 miles away. And then in 1947, Abelard House was bought, which was just about 2 miles east of where we are now, and that became the prep school. So bizarrely, there was Wester Elkies and Abelard House, kind of the same prep school, even though they're about 3 miles apart. But in the 60s, Wester Elkies got dry rot, had to be pulled down. You can see the ruins of it, just foundations, and all the Wester Elkies pupils transferred to Abelard House, which is why Abelard House had a dormitory called Elkies in memory of that one. So apart from that, there's no village on that side, not for several miles. So this is the village of Abelard. Anyway, Lynn Falls is hard by. I told you that the Lure or the Lower, that tributary of the Spey, if you walk up a horse path beside that, you get to these falls. Lynn in Scots Gaelic or Irish meaning a pool or bay. There's a bit of a plunge pool. It's only about 5 metre fall that the water goes over. Anyway, so this is called Alice Littler Park. So that is just an introduction to Abelard. Fantastic place for fishing if you're into that. And there's a whiskey distillery just outside it. We really are in whiskey country. That's enough from me.